Okay, here's the deal. While making this video, I had a lot of issues. One of which was sound. As you saw in my previous video, part 1 of this, which you'll see linked below. You saw how it all started. And I was having all kinds of difficulties with sound. In this one, I noticed while editing the video, there was no sound at all. And after having, worked on something and talked for a while, telling you what I'm doing, what decisions I'm making witty banter, telling awesome jokes, basically being the great entertainer I am, it was all gone. So, I'm going to try the voiceover thing and do a lot of fast montage. Because I mostly can't remember what I said. It probably has something to do with the frosty, fizzy beverage I was drinking while I was doing it. That also might have something to do with why the sound didn't work. Not the best troubleshooter. And yet I try to fix things. So, hold on. Here's part 2 of the Centrex by Pioneer DH303 bargain basement stereo system that I'm having a lot of fun with. Hopefully you are too. Anyway, here we go. I think to really get to the pots, I might have to take off the front cover here. So, off these come. Yoink, 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 yoink. And I've already loosened the screws up along the top and bottom. And on the inside, there's a plastic flange here to loosen up on both sides so that it comes off. And then we're on the inside. Pretty simple tuning string. 8-track tape covers. Filthy. And I'll be cleaning this all up too. I'm also thinking about changing out all these incandescent lights, probably harvesting them for other uses, because they're really dim. They don't really light up the 8-track tape selector dial very well. I've already measured how much voltage is required to get them to light, and that's 6 volts. And I disconnected one of them and put my multimeter in series with the light and found out it runs on 45 milliamps. So I'm thinking about using some white LEDs and about a 65 to 75 ohm resistor to get these to light and see how they work. Plus, there's only 2 dial lights and they suffer from kind of the same thing. They're very dim. Also 6 volts. And I'm thinking about fashioning these lights and maybe even add a third one. I haven't decided yet. Inside the cover here to bring up the light situation on the dial a little bit better because it's really dim. And there's one for the stereo indicator as well. And there's my multimeter saying, turn me off. You left me on, you dope. Because I was trying to figure out what was required to get these guys to light. I'll have to be fancy with it because these are not socketed, and these are. But you can always make something. It'll do the same thing. I use this to test things in various points every now and then, so I might be able to fashion something like this. And even use some old covers I have from some Sansui stuff I've worked on to make it. Yes, I hear you. I will turn you off. I swear. Give me a minute. Patience, my little red friend. To make kind of a cover and see if I can't shove it all in there. Now you can see the light cage and the 2 screws to undo, so I can flip that up and work in there. So yeah, here in the light cage, here's my idea to put in LED frosted lights, and they can replace the very dim incandescents, and I can reuse some covering I have again from some Sansui ones. Probably cut it in half because I don't need that much. Do the same thing here, placing the gasket, and I think I'm going to add a third one right there. So I'm going to have to modify this case just a little bit and make a bigger hole so I can do a third one and wire it in where all those wires go on the underside and see if it works. I think it's a good idea. We'll see. And here's where the voiceover work begins. I don't remember what I was saying here, but I'm sure it was hilarious. I used a 62 ohm resistor to get the voltage drop across the resistor right to get it to light. And here you see me fashioning the resistor to the LED and just making a kind of bodged lighting system. And you're going to see me make a whole bunch of these all at once because I needed 5 of these, 4 for the 8-track tape indicator lights and 1 for the stereo indicator light. And let me tell you, the stereo indicator light caused me fits, and I'll explain why it did later. Shrink tubing for the win. Gotta play around with the different sizes of shrink tubing and put it all together, heat it up, burn my fingers, heat it up, burn my fingers again, sit there and spin wires around until it looks pretty. But, you know, that's the name of the game at this point. Gotta make a whole bunch of them. And once you make a light, you gotta test it. So I was connecting the light across the little circuit board that controls the lights. And this circuit board was kind of neat because it was just labeled light 1, 2, 3, 4, and then everything else was ground. So once I was able to test one of them, I was pretty much convinced they would all work. So it was just the process of removing each individual little dim incandescent light. It turns out one of them pretty much was on its last legs because it blew out. So it was a good idea to change them all out anyway. So I removed the light bulb that was blown out and put in the new LED version just so I could see how it looked compared to the other ones. So I tested it out, turned it around, put in a tape, and there it is, much brighter than the other ones. And the video really doesn't do it justice. Those incandescents are actually really dim. And now once the new light is in there, you can see the indicator with the 1 much better, especially when, you know, it's daylight out. I was pretty happy with the results of this. Again, on the video here, it looks, hey, that 2 looks good, that 3 looks good, but you can barely see them. The camera actually sees it better than just the human eye does. Now you're going to see me go through the motions of slowly and carefully only burning my fingers once or twice with the soldering iron. Desolder all the other light bulbs, get them removed from the system, and wire in the other 3 lights. So this is just kind of rinse and repeat time. So got to make a whole bunch of lights and get them all in there. So I'm going to just let this kind of play because it's do the same thing again and again and again. How about some interesting music to listen to while this plays out? My large, ungraceful fingers are not made to tie tiny little things around tiny little things, and yet here I do it again and again and again for fun. Oh well. Well, at least it's working. Now here is the last incandescent light to come out. It's the one that indicates whether you have a stereo signal or not. And you see me tuning it to a stereo channel and then out of it. I had to find where it was wired on the inside. So there was this little white wire connected on this pin on the upper side of the system. And there was a wire that had to go underneath to a pin. And it turns out that the wires were backwards. So I assumed the white wire was the hot end and the black wire was the ground, but that's not the case. And not having a service manual, I couldn't really figure out the circuit board by eye too well, and I ended up wiring it backwards, at least for the LED, at least in that sense. So I took 2 attempts at this, and it was kind of frustrating because it's like I build the light, it works, test it, it works, put it in the circuit, it didn't work. It's like, huh? So I had to go back and forth a couple times until I realized, oh, it doesn't matter for an incandescent bulb, but it does for the LED. It prefers current in one direction. But eventually got it going, and here it is, nice and bright. Yay! And when I tune it off, no stereo light. When I tune it in, stereo light. So ultimately, success. And I made it purty because I do that. Now it became time to do the tuning dial lights. And again, the ones that were originally in there are hardwired, and I only had some screw-in versions of these. But I like to fashion things together with what I have. And I actually really like these lights because they have a nice frosted coating. They're LED, and it spreads out and diffuses the light really well. Originally, I thought when I was doing this, I would have to add a third light to really do the brightness across the dial really well. But it turns out the 2 were perfectly fine, especially with LED lights. The incandescent lights would create 2 little, like, warmer areas, and it was dim in the middle. That's why I was originally thinking 3 lights would be good. But 2 was plenty. And as you can see, I went for the shrink tubing too. Earlier in the video, I said, hey, I'm going to reuse some of these old Sansui light covers. And they just turned out to be too bulky and too hard to kind of work the way in. So here you see me trying to figure out where those lights are connected. This is on the underside, so that was the white wires on that pin. The black wires were under a whole bunch of other things, so I had to be kind of careful with the soldering iron because I like to burn wires apparently with soldering tips. I avoided it this time, which is rather shocking. But once I got those disconnected and removed, it turned out to be a pretty simple maneuver to fashion some lights together, create a nice little system, and reconnect them to the pins. There was no drama here. It all worked as it should, and everything was connected up. And you'll see it working here in a few minutes as I go through this. I think it's time for some more montage music. I think I'll do something other than the Bionic Man running theme. Looks pretty good. Definitely attached. See if it works. So all of the 8-track tape indicator lights have been replaced. Front dial indicator lights have been replaced. And there it is. The stereo light has been replaced. And I tried to make it obvious that I was in here doing this with the change in wires, red and green, and shrink tubing and everything. So hopefully it's clear if this ever ends up in somebody else's hand that, well, other than the LED lights, which would be a good big giveaway, somebody's been in here before. Namely me. So I think all the soldering and electrical work is done, unless anything rears its head is not working very well. So now I'm just going to clean it up, service the potentiometers up front, clean it all inside and out, polish some things because I keep putting fingerprints everywhere, and put it all back together. See what I mean? Sound, voiceovers, video making. Awesome stuff. Coming up in part 3 will be the cleanup and put it all back together and make sure it still works after all of that. That's the next video I need to figure out what's going wrong with. So stay tuned for that. I should be done after the next one though. And I have to find a new home. How do you sign off a video? I don't know. But yeah, bye. See you next time.